Thank you, Anthony. For the recording, we established quorum. We moved the May 18th minutes to pass, and we're on discussion item 2 around community outreach and engagement. We'll start with the goals of community outreach engagement. And what was the other piece you wanted to bring up?
I know one of our primary objectives is to align with our climate action plan for the town. So just kind of how we see these educational initiatives continuously reminding our town residents of the climate action plan and the short and long-term objectives, just kind of how we tie it all together.
Yeah, that's fantastic. We had a presentation on the CAP during the May 18th meeting. And since then, at the June 21st council meeting, we presented a draft of the climate action plan that established new targets for the town. So we're looking at carbon neutrality by 2045. And then so that's the high level goal. And that means all emissions in the town are reduced as much as possible, and any remaining emissions are captured through various methods like carbon sequestration, applying compost, planting trees, as well as some more emerging technologies. We also had a 2030 goal of a 49% emissions reduction. And that's based on our 2005 levels, which was the first year we did our inventory. The council was excited about that goal, and they wanted to dig into the strategies more. And so actually a lot of the strategies were related to community engagement and outreach, as we're trying to motivate and inspire change that's often voluntary. And so the climate action plan has some policy levers, has some programmatic levers, and then it also has levers around educating people, letting people know what our goals are, how they fit into the bigger picture. The bulk of the town's emissions come from burning natural gas in buildings, as well as burning gasoline in vehicles. And so we know that to have the greatest impact, we need to focus on our energy use in buildings and how we fuel our transportation sector. And so when we look at events, we should be looking at events that really target those two areas. And then we also have, statewide goals that fit into the climate action plan around waste reduction through Senate Bill 1383, the Short-Lived Climate Pollutants Act, where we have a state mandate to sequester as much carbon as possible through the purchase of compost, providing compost service, and procuring recycled paper. Those are kind of like the 3 buckets under that law. So when we think about our policy goals from the council, we're looking at buildings and vehicles. And then when we look at that additional 1383 legislation, we're looking at compost and waste reduction as our main targets. And so when looking at goals specifically for each of these outreach events, we can, as a group, kind of think about what we want the outcome to be. We've talked about this in the context of Earth Day and the electric landscaping tool workshop as wanting to really inspire change and have people leave an event and make a change at home, whether it's, calling a contractor to get quotes for a heat pump to replace their gas system, or whether they meet someone new and, join a local organization where they're, doing advocacy. So we want people to attend the events and have it catalyze future action, was something that I heard in the last meeting. But we could further identify goals for these individual activities as well as we go through. Was that good context, or you want me to pull up I could pull up the slide?
No, I think that's perfect. I just wanted to make sure, and maybe what we could even do is add a column for how each of the events align with the town and the state.
Oh, that's a great idea. Like a goal alignment.
Sure. And then for each event that we hold, we can just remind the participants that, this is both educational, but it's actually part of our ambition to reduce emissions and sequester carbon.
To be clear, the climate action plan hasn't been adopted yet, right?
No, we'll be bringing that back to council in October for their consideration for a study session where we'll spend more time looking at each of the actions.
This is not for this discussion. We should do this later in a bigger discussion. But you said the 2 points were elimination of natural gas and of gasoline vehicles. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so then the question is, what's the town going to do to cause that to happen?
So there's 60 actions in the plan, and each one of those actions has been quantified. So it's a pretty sophisticated process that we've already been through, but we will definitely review that. And I think there's an opportunity with one of these events to even do that with the community, so we can learn what the community priorities
Where
are.
I'm leading to is, I'll have to go read that whole thing again. But what if, just what if, the residents actually didn't support parts of that plan? What would you do?
Well, that's the point, getting public input, and then you can decide if we don't want to do this measure, then we're gonna have to do more over here, or we're going to have.
For example, reducing the gasoline cars. I'm not sure what the town does to do that and what the response would be of the residents. But that's the longer discussion.
Yeah.
Let's get on with this.
Perhaps then looking at a specific event, the EV showcase, which I know was a huge success at Earth Day. Keeping the focus on education and trends around mobility, we could have that event tied to the Climate Action Plan if it passes in October. And if not, it could just be more of an educational, the showcase that we've had actually for the last 2 Earth Days and maybe earlier ones. I don't know, Councilwoman Lewis, we showed EVs in all of the Earth Days pretty much the last 5 years maybe. So it could be more around education, because I think a lot of residents might have questions about the different types of vehicles that are available. And they don't all have to be electric. They could also be, for example, the water cars. I think there's at least one out there that Toyota offers.
So if I could just make a comment. So Evie, back in 2008, I think our first Earth Day was 2007, and I participated in the 2008. There were these little scooters that were EV that were just being introduced, and I've got a photograph of me on one of those. And so I think the problem that the town, as a government agency, as an entity of itself, is so small. We do not have fleets of vehicles where we can just, take 50 cars of our, staff and turn them into EV. So as the town itself, I know the city manager drives a hybrid. I think at least 4 of the 5 that I know, council people drive electric vehicles. So, I think it's a challenge for the town, and the residents certainly drive a lot of electric vehicles, but I guess they also have SUVs also. But we have a small town, so reducing that is kind of hard. But I think adding your column about the goal alignment of all these activities is really a good one, Amy, and I think that would help a lot so that we can keep track.
It seems to me that on the EV side, we have to emphasize 2 things. One is the cost of the car for a private person to replace the car with an EV. And that is something that maybe on average people in Atherton can afford to do, more so than maybe in East Palo Alto. The other thing that we have to emphasize, which is a good thing, is that we live in San Mateo County, and presumably, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm 90% sure that the electricity that we get in this area is all green, is all solar, because of the arrangements that have been made by the local utilities that furnish the power that the PG&E transmits but doesn't create. So we have an advantage that the charging stations, if we have charging stations in this area and in San Mateo County, they are green.
Thank you, Gregory. That was a point that I was remiss in making, in that our electricity is 100% clean energy through Peninsula Clean Energy. So electrifying
It's the most expensive.
vehicles and buildings will reduce our emissions, get us to zero in those categories.
So this is something that should incentivize our population here in this town to realize that we've gone halfway already, or 2/3 of the way. And if they get an EV, they go 100%.
Yeah, and I think Earth Day 2022, we had residents bring their EVs, and that seemed to go. If we had enough lead time, we were able to reach out to some residents, and it was more of an exchange of information, where we had maybe even a fact sheet, to Gregory's point, with charging. A lot of people have charging at home, but with charging stations around, and little facts about if you have a Tesla, but you want to charge at another charging station, have you thought about getting one of the adapters? Or what are the costs involved if you put in your own charging at home? Just some little facts that might not be well understood by people who are thinking of changing. And we could also have a little fact sheet on the minerals that are involved. I know there's a lot of discussion around that lately. And just with some information, really, again, education, not pushing one way or another, but just we're here to be a resource. And if people bring their own cars, they can talk about their own experiences.
It could be interesting too to highlight an Atherton resident as like a case study of how they installed their charger and what equipment they have, because there can be some pretty unique situations here. It's a good idea.
If they have 220, they can charge pretty quickly. 220 volts. Not quite as fast as a charging station, but they can charge pretty quickly. My daughter lives in Menlo Park, and she charges pretty quickly.
Yeah, and then we could also have the argument of if you have a combustion engine vehicle, putting it into waste or landfill is obviously not the right choice either. So what does it mean to use your vehicle until the end of its life, and then at what point do you make a decision? So we can have that perspective, and it would be really interesting. I've always been curious, when a vehicle comes to the end of its life and it's compacted down, what are the emissions involved in that process? So yeah, it would just be, again, education, and then we can align it with the town and the state objectives. So in terms of timing, I mean, I think the EV showcase is one that we already had good feedback from Earth Day, if those are good case studies. So that would be one that I'd kind of bump up to one to prioritize, but all these other ones look great too.
Time-wise. You mean time-wise, move it up?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Makes sense, yeah.
I'll put a priority column
You can do
here.
that in the rain, by the way.
Yeah.
And we don't have to get into all the details, just
Yeah.
I appreciate the priority setting.
I cannot see this on the chart, but somebody brought up the point at the last meeting, which I had never thought about, that new construction in the town brings in a lot of pollution. And that's something that's hard to control, because if trucks come for construction, how do you make sure that they're electrical? They're not. The trucks are not electrical. Am I correct in this?
Yep.
Yeah. So both in terms of air quality of the residents and associated emissions with building.
Yes. Is that in the chart? I can't see it.
No.
No, that's not on the chart.
Okay.
These are more outreach activities.
We would put it-
As the EPC,
we would put it-
you
Ordinance?
could provide feedback around a policy for delivery trucks and construction vehicles, commercial vehicles. I believe the county has that as a priority policy as well, so I'm sure they'll engage us. And I can get more details from them on when they plan to put together that policy, and we can kind of sign on. I think that type of effort works best as like a regional approach. But let me get more information on that, Gregory. Thank
Yeah,
you.
and again, just in terms of education, would be interesting to know with the delivery services, Amazon and otherwise, when are they planning to roll out electric vehicles? And in terms of construction, I know that's something we don't have control over, but just again, education on what it means for our residents. I think we need a couple more interns because this is a lot of fact sheet building with all the. Is there another one that really jumps up to you guys, like the composting, or what do you think, Ken?
I love the composting thing for a lot of reasons. One of the problems with it, and I understand that was some discussion, I've gone over to use it. And it's not overly usually user-friendly. And it's, even though we've announced it, it probably isn't well known. And where it is and all the rest. So we should have a discussion sidebar on this about what we do about the composting, because I think it's wonderful. I think the fact you could have that used, stuff that came out here originally, is wonderful. We just got to find a way to get used more. And it might be, part of it just might be the physical layout. Quite frankly, sending someone over there with a shovel and a pail is arduous.
Totally. It stopped me from going, and
I went over there and I went, oh my God, I can, how many of these could I do? And I'm just trying to think what, I don't have the answer, but we should think about how we do it. I mean, potentially, for example, maybe they could deliver the stuff onto a raised bed, and you wind up just scraping it from the raised bed into your bucket or in your pickup truck or whatever. If we could get every landscaper here, use that as their source of topsoil, that would be a great advantage for everybody.
Yeah.
Including them, because it's free. Right?
Yeah, we could do a compost workshop outside too at the pile. And that might also,
In fact,
attract.
maybe we call up some of the landscapers who are here for the greenscaping thing and say, how would you make this more friendly to you? What would we have to do
yeah,
for you
That's
to
a
come
great
over
idea.
here and pick this stuff up? Because right now, I guarantee my guy's not going to do it. I mean, he's just not going to come over here with a bucket and a shovel and try and pick it up.
But that's a great idea for awareness. And if we had it at the actual site, and then again, residents could bring, if they're easy to transport, their compost they might have, whether it's just buckets they use on their counter in their kitchen, or, we could show the different types, because I know there's the turning
A
kind.
worm composting day.
Yeah, vermiculture is another thing.
That is, I have one of those, and every week I take worms out and put them around my house.
Yeah.
Outside the house.
Let's add vermiculture to that. I think it's a good idea.
Now, when you talk about composting, are you talking about waste, food waste, or are you talking about mowed grass, or what?
You're talking about food waste, aren't you, Amy?
I was talking about food waste. I know you're mentioning yard waste, but I thought all of the organic matter could go together, right?
But if you have a worm farm, your compost in your house, the food waste goes there, virtually all of it. I mean, not the bones and stuff, but
Yeah.
everything else.
But presumably, our green waste company takes care of that.
Well, they do, yeah. But then when they pick it up, they have to truck it all the way to Gilroy and do the work and then truck it back here. So that's a lot more fuel and pollution than if you just use it in your backyard.
Right. And just thinking about circularity, if we want to keep the benefits, as you said, of the topsoil in the town. So that could be part of the education, whether you're composting at home or
What did you call it, wormiculture?
I think it's vermiculture with the V for victory.
So I buy worms from Jim's place back in Pennsylvania once a year, and they are great. And I often send them to friends who bought a house or bought it and just moved into a place, and I call it their house warming gift.
Oh, I love that.
Worms.
Worms, but how's
housewarming
vermi
gift.
I send them 1,000 worms. I send them 1,000 worms. They come in a bag. They dump them in their yard, and in 3 minutes, they're all gone. Run happy worms.
That is a fantastic idea though, around the holidays, giving people ideas for more sustainable gifting. I like that.
Who doesn't want a worm?
Who doesn't want a worm? And they're the red wigglies. They're not the earthworms. That's an
Right, the
important
red wigglies-
differentiation. Yeah.
Things like warmest greetings.
So we'll put the compost workshop as a high priority, and that might be a nice one. Maybe It might be
You
better
add
to
the
do sooner
wormer-
rather than later.
You add the wormer culture thing to the composting. They go
Yes.
together.
Yeah, we can do both in one evening.
I'll bring my worms over. I don't have an
That's
EV.
perfect. We
but I have
can see
worms.
the worms. And I have a little worm, the house, stackable. Then the other thing is if, you know, again, we bring it back to what are the benefits? So methane emissions is the primary gas, I think, emitted during, the composting process, right? When it's breaking down.
Yep.
Correct.
So if we think about, you know, how composting food waste and keeping it out of landfill is beneficial, and then the benefits of using that compost back on our own
You-
soil.
You're asking a good question. That is, if you take compost, food waste, and you sit it there and let it compost naturally, it breaks down and the carbon goes in the air. Remember, if the worms do it, is it less?
I think it has to do with oxygen. So it has to do with being in an aerobic or anaerobic conditions. I'm no scientist, but
Okay. Sorry.
yeah, so I know that that's how you can, yeah, break it down without the methane.
Pyrolysis, yeah.
But I think that would be great to highlight, and I've taken the course through San Mateo County. And then you get a compost bin, which I've yet to pick up, but maybe we could highlight that as well, Rachel, that if people were interested in doing the course, I think it was an hour and a half.
Why
virtual.
couldn't we do the course at the same time at the location?
Oh, yeah. Would the county, you think, send over their experts to?
Yeah, they have a program where cities can request
Yeah.
to bring like
They
a
could come over, do the lecture, and then you can go
compost
and do
kit
stuff.
in a box.
Yeah, because then you get the composter if you don't have one.
Yeah, you get a free one for taking the course.
Mhm.
Perfect.
Cool. And they do them virtually and in person. We'd probably want to do it in person near our pile, right?
I mean, you
And-
can do it right, you can do the next building to the POW or do something, yeah.
Yeah,
And they could
great.
probably, actually, that's a good point. If we want to attract more people, should we offer it virtual, or you could come on site and see?
I'll ask the county for
Okay.
what they have availability for. Great. And I'll let them lead with dates and can bring that back to the group.
I'll send you my Jim's worm stuff.
Some of these other ones I think would be great at the library. I think we talked a little bit about this as well, but canning and food preservation and the patchwork with purpose event. I think those are fantastic and ideas and could be done at the library or even here, I suppose, if we needed the kitchen for the canning.
What's the
Great.
kitchen demonstration, do you know?
Well, for canning, I think you may need access to a stove, right?
And this is, I mean, it's. Help me, because I'm not familiar with this.
Oh, that's down towards the bottom. It's around, you know, the concept of food preservation.
And the environmental advantage is that
You keep food waste to the minimum.
so
By,
by canning it,
yeah, tomatoes,
keeps longer, you know,
plums.
it doesn't spoil, et cetera, that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think a lot of our residents are experiencing, you know, lots of plums right now. And I know we get a lot of apricots, so not sure if we're going to catch that one timing wise, but we might get just a different audience too. That's a, you know, specific audience for that topic. And same with the patchwork with
So it's kind
purpose.
of preserving the food so you don't throw it away is what you're really saying. right?
Yeah. Or you could
Which,
give
by
it
the way, is a big problem around here, because we all throw away food, it's amazing.
exactly.
And late summer makes the most sense based on harvest and everything. August.
Yeah, and then there again, just not sure if we can fit it in this summer, but making sure that the residents know if they have an abundance of fruit, where they can take it to local food banks and otherwise.
Who's Actera?
Oh, Actera was one of our partners for Earth Day. They have an office in Palo Alto, but they serve the Greater Peninsula.
What do they do?
But they have a variety of programs, but they're one of the only nonprofits that has a sustainability food related program. So they have a variety of like plant-based cooking demos and programs.
They lead this, basically.
We would ask them if they could provide the expertise. We could also ask for the canning, the UC Master Preservers. They're a partner that,
And do
Um,
they sell the equipment or what do they do? How do they make their?
no,
money?
they're volunteers.
Okay.
Yeah, they're all community-based organizations. And so what I can do with all these kind of one-off or one night or one day workshops, HCNI can reach out to the right partners who would have the expertise as far as instructors. We wouldn't need a budget for any of these. They're all volunteer-led,
Have you ever
and we
heard,
could set
heard of
those on
the-
calendar.
the fruit and vegetable guys who sell blemished fruits and vegetables?
Yeah,
What's their name?
imperfect foods.
Oh. Yeah.
Would it be conceptual that they would actually be at the place at the same time? And show their imperfect foods that save us a lot of money by not throwing them away, a lot of everything else.
That's a great
I'll
idea.
add them as a partner
People
here.
could can their products. Cause you can can an imperfect food and make it look perfect, right?
And I think that's might be a subscription-based service
Yeah.
where they deliver. So,
Yeah.
yeah, is it? Okay, so that could be someone on a panel or something like that, or someone just participating.
But if they showed up with imperfect foods, it wouldn't be a bad thing.
Yeah,
They could can imperfect foods, right?
That could be a good partnership. Okay, for the events that go beyond like the talks and the different topics with which HNI can coordinate, I want to get feedback on doing a community bike ride or bike rodeo. One of the library staff actually approached me about doing a community bike ride since they have 2 bikes for checkout and they have their little fix-it station out here. I talked to Atherton PD and they were interested in doing like safety as well as like a little obstacle course for kids I don't know, have you all seen bike rodeos? Yeah, to learn how to bike ride
fun.
and then we could kind of move it into the streets where PD's, bookmarking the riders as we maybe do a trail from here to the park or something to show kind of a practical route.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. We'll move forward with that one too. And then if there's any that either of you would like to have a larger hand in planning, we'll basically assume that myself and Ishani will kind of take these and run. But if either of you want to be more involved, since we only
Her
meet every 2
contact, So we
months.
can contact her when we need her.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. What do you think? Worms and composting for you, Ken? And
I'd love to, yeah, I'm,
Gregory, do
I
you
love
have
worm-
one that you really want to get? One or two?
One that I brought up, I think it was last time, was the question of what happens to all our plastics when we quote unquote recycle it. And I don't know if somebody talked to people at Green Waste, but I did by coincidence. I had a conversation with somebody, and I asked them, how much of the plastic that you get from us do you recycle? And the lady said about 80%. So I said, how do you do that? And she said, well, I'm not exactly sure, but some of it gets recycled in this country and some of that goes to Mexico. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's correct. It's basically a commodity. So whatever, whoever will buy the plastics, for the best rate will get the plastics.
I mean,
And they found a lot of, obviously scary things are happening when we send our plastics overseas. They get dumped in the ocean, they get burned, they get
Right.
landfilled. Yeah,
they never make
So
it,
overseas,
make it China.
would Mexico be considered overseas?
yes.
probably, yeah.
I mean, does it go I mean, do we know? This is something that this person that talked to me on the phone didn't know. I said, how do they do it in Mexico? She said, I have no idea.
So that's actually a really good point, Gregory. Maybe we could have a zero waste workshop where we could have people from the zero waste stores locally. There's one in San Mateo, there's one in Los Altos, could come and we could have someone from Green Waste talk about that 80% and show us exactly which plastic items are recycled and with film and other things that aren't recycled, what happens, and then we can dig into that 20% and just try to encourage people to go to refill stores if they can.
But it's not that easy. I know people try to do it. It's not that easy. And one thing which is very hard to recycle apparently are the little receptacles that you get when you buy pills. Because-
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
I was just
Yes.
on a meeting where someone asked how to recycle those. And there's not a way, and they were talking about advocacy with Kaiser and the other insurance providers.
Where do you take yours now, Rachel? What do you do with them?
CVS.
I throw them away or reuse them.
Well, there's a problem.
Yeah.
Because you're supposed to take them to the recycling center, right? And where I do mine, and by the way, I have a lot, is I take them either to PAMF, where I go, or you can take them to the the Menlo Park police station. And there is nothing here in Atherton for that. And I had a conversation with the police guys a year ago saying, why don't we just do what the Menlo Park guys do? Is
Mhm.
put a recycling here. And it didn't make sense for whatever reason.
Years and years and years.
Oh, microphone.
What did you say about, before you mentioned Menlo Park, did you mention PAMF?
Palo Alto Medical Foundation, right?
Okay, I talked to them and they admitted to me that when you recycle a little bottle or receptacle or whatever you call it, and you take it there, they do not recycle it. What they do, they accept the thing because people bring them pills that they didn't use,
Correct.
and they
Right.
don't like to put those pills into the toilet.
You don't want them in the water, no.
So to pollute the water. So they bring them to the Palo Alto Medical Foundation, and the foundation takes the pills and does something with them. I don't know what it is, but they don't recycle the little bottle.
Exactly.
They-
What all you do when you take a pharmacy thing back to somebody, a pill, is that they burn normally the pharmaceutical to get rid of it. And then the plastic goes in the regular plastic dump.
Yeah.
And who knows where it goes, what happens.
They admitted to me that it's probably not recycled.
Well, when you went down to the composting thing, Rachel, did you see them actually go through hand by hand, the stuff coming in, sorting it?
I haven't been to Green Waste Facility yet. That tour was canceled, but
Because
let's do a moment for public comment. I saw we had a.
oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Gary Blue.
Oh, let me give you a microphone.
Just press the little button.
There we go. So I'm Gary Bloom. I'm actually on the fire board, and Rachel had asked me to come listen into your meeting, see what you're up to. On this pill question and the recycling of drugs and drug containers, it's all a safety-based issue. So the reason that they're not trying to recycle it is they're not actually processing those. They're incinerating them and getting rid of them. And it has to do with needle pricks
Sure, yeah.
and the sharps issue. And the
Yeah.
reason that a lot of the San Mateo County locations shut down their their containers for dropping in drugs is because the people that were having to empty those were getting pricked by needles. And so they just got out of the business of doing it. So you can do it at a couple of the Recology sites, offer special collections. Some medical facilities will collect them. Walgreens will give you a sharps container. If you're getting sharps, you can mail them in, send them back through the mail. So, but the big issue of it is just purely a safety issue around that. And they don't want to be separating pills from bottles, from
Yeah.
needles, from syringes. And so they just, can't recycle it for that reason.
So I missed your background and the reason you're here.
So I happen to be a member of the Menlo Park Fire Protection District Board of Directors.
Okay.
So I'm the liaison for the town of Atherton. And Rachel invited me to one of your meetings and just suggested I might want to attend. I did some work in the smart grid in one of my past jobs.
He's an elected official for the fire board, like I'm an elected official.
Gotcha,
for the city
gotcha.
council.
Right.
Gotcha,
He had to run and get
gotcha,
elected.
gotcha. Okay. So,
Yeah.
so the
And
next
I
question,
happen to have a fire rescue background as well in my kind of 40 years of volunteer work, which is why I was elected there.
so
He's here relative to item number 2 or number 3, which is recruitment.
given your background and the rest of us here, what do we think the percentage in the town of Atherton of used pharmaceutical containers, many of which will have some leftover out-of-date things? What do you think the percentage of that is recycled anywhere or just thrown in your own trash?
I personally would be guessing, but I would think a lot of it lands in the trash, or I can tell you what we do is we have a drawer that it just collects in.
And then what do you do?
Because it's a hassle to go take it and try to find a place they'll take it. So it just collects. But I would say if I had to guess, the vast majority of people throw it in the trash.
I'll bet you 80% of the people just throw it in their normal trash. And then it winds up at green waste. And then what does green waste do with it? And when I went, I haven't been to green waste, but I've been to other places. And what they have is people with surgical, reinforced gloves going through all the trash, looking for stuff, hoping to find things like the pharmaceutical things and other sharps before they turn them into compost. So it's a very difficult problem. And one of the questions then is, where do we as Atherton for green waste, where do we throw our plastic containers? What trash does it go into? Goes in the blue, right? The big blue thing that takes everything.
Yeah, you put it in the blue.
And so in the blue, we get all
You
the,
don't have that food waste.
all the regular trash plus all the plastic. So therefore, green waste then has to sort between the two, right?
They do. So I've been to the facility and they do hand sort it. They
That's
have
what I'm saying, yeah.
about 35 people that work
Right.
there. And they've got these extensive gloves on and they are hand sorting them. They also have an AI function that does a little bit of sorting as well.
Yeah, it's a difficult problem.
But when you say sorting, what does that mean? It's
That means
separating
that there's
and
a
then they-
conveyor belt that they dump the trash onto or the waste, the recyclable materials, and they have human beings hand sorting it through these different conveyor processes to pull out a variety of different materials. Like they'll pull out e-waste, they'll pull out batteries, they'll pull out certain food items, they'll pull out cardboard boxes that are too soiled, they'll pull out a variety of different materials.
But it's a manual thing.
It's a manual
and it
process.
suffers all the issues of manual things. It's a very, very inaccurate and difficult thing to do.
I can't say it's inaccurate, but I can say that it certainly looks challenging.
Yeah.
And I don't think that I could keep up the pace that those people do. They work in,
Yeah, we could arrange that, Ken, if you're interested.
Maybe we could have a panel then, to Gregory's point, on plastic.
I
And
was thinking around Coastal Cleanup Day might be a good day. September 23rd is Coastal Cleanup Day. And I reached out to the county and was like, oh, could we do Coastal Cleanup Day in Atherton? And they were like, well, what would you guys clean? It's so beautiful and pristine already. And I was like, oh, maybe the high school, but maybe
How about El
instead of
Camino?
a cleanup, what we do is an
Camino.
educational.
El
I heard
Camino.
last night El Camino's a mess. We should clean up El Camino.
Well, we'll put you in a vest out there.
So where I was leading now is if we as residents separate our stuff from outside land trimmings and garbage organics, and then the big blue container, are there other locations that have a separate container, a fourth one, which is plastic only? So we do the separation, not green waste, is my question. I'm not saying we should do it. I'm just saying, does anybody do that?
Not everyone is as good as you are.
No, I'm not. Trust me,
I have
as you
never
know, Elizabeth,
heard,
I'm not that good.
I haven't heard of that though, Ken, but when I lived in Japan, they had a separate container for burnables. So I know that they separated out to 5 trash bins, but I guess if we're going to focus on education, if we did a panel on plastic and zero waste, and we had someone talk about what do you do with the pill containers for right now, we just collect them and I guess take them to the locations you mentioned. And then also talk about which things get recycled and what doesn't.
Back there, is there a spot for plastic only in those little containers back there?
here.
Yeah.
We have a 3-stream system.
Anthony, your microphone's not on.
3-stream system. It's a paper, plastic and trash.
That's what I'm saying.
Mixed compostables.
Mixed
Not trash.
compostables, thank you.
And then Aishin had a comment.
Going off of the education panel situation, I'm afraid if we have too many panels, people will get extremely bored and stop listening. I know that my school had a little recycling waste kind of demonstration. Recology came to our school and like told us how to recycle and how to compost, and how you're supposed to, like for aluminum foil, you're supposed to ball it up and like all that stuff. So like if we had like a demonstration and then some kind of activity where people could practice that, or even at this kind of do that with the trash that's there.
I love
I
it.
feel like
Yeah.
it's a little more interactive and people won't get bored from just listening to people talk at them. forever.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And especially if they have people who can come and show us.
Like even do a waste audit or something in the library and go from there. And it could almost be set up like a fair where we have a couple of different booths where the zero waste stores could even be, offering their products.
In line with what you're saying, the education piece that came out of my tour, when they have soiled cardboard, like during the rainy season, they can't do anything with it. So that's for me, that was like, I throw all of my recyclable material in my side yard until, Tuesday night when I go out there at 2:00 in the morning to like do all of my stuff. But if it's been raining or wet, then I screwed it for recycling. So that's like an education piece that somebody who's like me would have just thought, oh man, I messed this up to be able to recycle it, right? So to your point, we have people, hey, if you're going to leave, I know you hate Amazon. The rest of us use it religiously, unfortunately. If you're putting your 20 boxes outside in the rainy weather, then you just ruined it. Well,
Or a
if you
composter.
order groceries or you get like a scooter in the mail, like I just got, they put like handlebars in one box and the rest of it in the other.
And
So-
there's different ways to properly handle like those bubble mailers too.
Yep.
Yeah. you don't
So,
wanna just
so
throw 'em in the
that's, I
trash.
think it's real, it's tangible, and it's something that we know people would benefit from. Great. It's a great idea.
Thank you, Gregory, for inspiring that. And then maybe we could invite a couple of booths, have it at the library and have a couple of talks or presentations, green waste, maybe someone to speak about plastic pollution. There might be someone from our Earth Day lineup who would know. Maureen, who organized our speakers, might have an idea.
Yes, Maureen O'Keefe, she helped us find those speakers. Yep.
Okay. And just being cognizant of time, we might want to shift from this outreach conversation and get into our recruitment conversation. So if there's any other things we wanted to kind of elevate for discussion, we can do that now, or we can, Ishani and I can go forth and we'll talk to Ken about composting and Amy about everything else.
I'll be
Sure.
back till worms next time.
Great. And then, Gregory, can I follow up with you on the plastic event?
Sure.
Cool. Thank you all for committing to help us with these. I think they'll be really valuable. And they're all going to be under the umbrella of Love Our Earth, to carry that branding from Earth Day all year round. Yeah, and you're off the hook, council member, since we have the centennial excitement. That's. And I was just thinking for the centennial too, we'll have to incorporate some of these things we just discussed around having clear waste receptacle signs, making sure our vendors using compostables, that sort of thing. Okay. And the centennial will be on September 24th, Sunday, from 11 to 3 here. So you all should mark your calendars for that. It's promising to be a grand affair. Okay. Oh, and National Night Out will be August 1st, and we'll have a sustainability booth as well as proper waste sorting at Holbrook Palmer Park, August 1st, 6 to 8 p.m. And I'm sure you'll be there, Gary, with your whole Menlo Park Fire team.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, it should be a good event. If anyone wants to table with me at that event, I'll have a sustainability booth, and I have some flyers and information and as well as some fun giveaways.
I can table that night
Awesome.
first. Yeah.
Cool. I was gonna ask you too, but I'll ask you later. Okay, can we wrap up that item? Great, we can go into our recruitment. So Anthony, can you confirm the requirements for being a committee member? I know there was something that happened on the dais last night and I just want to make sure we get that right.
Prior to our amendments to the governing resolution, any person who wanted to join a committee or a commission had to be a registered voter, and the council has opted to remove the registered voter requirement. So you just need to be a member of a resident of the town, essentially. We haven't clarified if we're going to put an age limit. At present, there is no rule that says somebody has to be of a certain age. And I think we'll probably see how that works. It was discussed, but not decided. So as of right now, you just have to be a resident.
So it doesn't say 18. I always thought it was 18.
Well,
But 18
prior to our amendments to the resolution, it was a registered voter, which meant
it's been
18.
18, right,
Right.
yeah.
And, you know, there's new
Which makes
ways
sense.
that I think, I don't know how old you are, but like if you're 16, now you can like early register to vote. There's, I'm blanking on the term, but it started in like 2017. It's like 16 or 17, you can early register. And that allows you, so that person could have,
But you
kind
can't
of-
vote.
no, but they could be considered a registered voter. So, you know, it's just a little tricky nuance to think about. So.
But there's no drug test or anything, right?
Well, you would have failed, so no.
But yeah, you would have known
I would
about
have been,
that.
as they say, grandfather.
There wasn't
Your,
even,
your grandfather did.
yeah.
So it's just a resident.
Okay, and so we have three positions that are obviously filled right now. And we have two vacancies, and I put in the staff report the terms of those vacancies.
Why is one a 2 and one a 4?
They're all 4-year terms, but one of them was a midterm resignation. So
Jennifer?
that term, I can look it up really quick.
Doesn't matter.
So we have a
So-
4-year term expiring June twenty
so
twenty-seven
the
and a
other-
2-year
The other
expiring June
question
twenty
that came
twenty-five.
up on other committees is, why 4 years? Why not 2?
You tell me.
Say again?
I mean, so rhyme or reason, I could come up with a bunch of different reasons why. For one, we don't want to recruit that frequently. Prior to when I got here, the city was recruiting for 15 to 20 spots like every single year. And then that year, we decided to stagger terms because what was happening is
Yeah.
3 or 4 people would expire at the same time. And so then we were scrambling to replace. So terms were then staggered to where you only have 1 or 2 people
I
expire, right?
understand, yeah.
And the terms were always 4 years,
Right.
typically to mirror what we do with council. We do have on the Park and Rec Committee foundation seats that are only 2 years. And to your point, the reason why is probably to reduce staff effort and energy in constantly recruiting for new members.
Well, the reason I bring it up is that I know in other discussions with other committees, a 4-year commitment is a long commitment for people.
Certainly.
Second, and by the way, in most committees, planning might be different because it's very sophisticated. But most committees, you're up to speed quickly. So it's
Would
not,
agree.
not you're going to be there for 3 years. It's also an issue because an issue of recruiting local college students. There's 2 guys at least in the Menlo College who are interested in potentially joining the committee. They are residents over 18.
Yep.
But you can't sign up for 4 years if you're a junior. Think you're not, you can't guarantee you're going to stay here 2 years afterwards to stay on the committee. So it's a detriment to having somebody sign up.
So this is what I would propose in very similar situations than what I've done in other cities. I don't like to change or make policy to accommodate,
Yep.
1 or 2 instances, right? I don't want to make a grand scale policy that's only going to accommodate 2 or 3.
Sure, yeah.
In that scenario, we'd say, well, what do you think your time commitment can be? Well, I'm a junior, I'm going to graduate in 2 years. Great. Enroll, join up. We'll take you for 2 years and then you're responsible for finding the student that's your buddy on campus to replace you when you leave. Something to that effect as opposed to changing.
Yeah, the concept.
Yeah,
And I think we can start there.
Yep.
And then decide what to do.
Yeah.
Would anybody have an objection to having a Menlo College student on the board? Knowing they could,
there is no objection. A Menlo College student could apply to be a committee member as of now.
no, I'm
and-
saying, but us saying, do we really want someone who's
No, I
not,
think it's a fantastic
not gonna be
idea.
here
to
forever? You know what I mean?
Well, for one, the
Definitely.
council appoints
Yeah.
it, not this.
Besides,
Yeah, yeah, but I think that, quite frankly, I think the council should probably talk to the committee before they appoint people. That's another story. I'd be nice, it would be at least a nice courtesy, but that's another story.
Well, let me help navigate that on how it does happen. We post a public agenda. That agenda comes out weeks before. If anybody on the committee has a question about that application, it's available for public view. You could go to the mayor hours on Tuesday. You can send an email to the mayor or all of council. You can send an email or contact the city manager or the deputy city manager or the city clerk. You could attend that meeting and make a public comment about those applications. So to your point, I don't disagree, and I would argue that there's plenty of opportunity
How
for.
hard is it for Rachel to say, we got these 3 applications, just so you know?
I'm sorry,
hard
say
is
that
it?
one, say that part, that last part.
How hard is it? We get 3 applications in for Rachel to send the rest of the committee, hey, by the way, good news, we have these 3 applications. How hard?
Well,
is
we
that?
can't make that available to you exclusively,
No, make it to the
right?
committee.
So we make it available to the public when we publish the
But you
public
can't send it to
agenda.
the committee?
As a courtesy, once the agenda is published, I would be happy to make note and send
Okay,
it to you.
gotcha, okay.
I'd
It-
go
But
the
it,
extra mile for
it
you.
already does. So every time I publish the agenda every single Friday, you guys get an email. And that email says, here's the published agenda, and it's got the links that send you to where to go and view that. Yeah.
I know the information's all there.
Yeah.
Just finding it sometimes.
But yeah,
is-
be more direct, yeah.
Okay, done.
And then the application is in the staff report. Did you see that? There's a link for the online one as well as the printed one, which you could pass along to any of your interested contacts. And then once we have more members, we can bring back our subcommittees that we had that worked more on policy. Like we had the Reach Code Policy Subcommittee that established the all-electric new building requirement. Right now, with the challenge in Berkeley, we've had to pause enforcement on that, but we could have that subcommittee work on an alternative policy. There's a lot of totally legally sound policies that we could bring forth. We also have a website subcommittee where we could, we're doing an open data dashboard of our climate action data. And so we could have someone, help with figuring out what data sets and how to tell the stories there. And we also have like the landscaping subcommittee. So we have a lot of subcommittees that are in hibernation mode that we could bring back once we have a full committee. So it's not going to be just this outreach and education, but we can do, a whole universe of things. And so if there's someone at Menlo College or in your contacts who has a special area of expertise or interest, I'd also be happy to talk to them and see if kind of their ideas are appropriate to bring forth and realize in this group. That makes sense?
Since we're on membership, can I ask Elizabeth a question?
Yeah, of course.
It has to do with the impending discussion of transportation and bicycle being put together. I know that discussion is going on. I don't know the details, but it is going on, correct?
I can provide the details on that if you're okay.
Yes, go ahead.
So the Transportation, Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee have now been formally merged to form the Transportation, Bicycle and Pedestrian Safety Committee. It went from two separate committees of 5 members to one committee of 7 members.
Okay. And that was done because, and
There are a variety of reasons, but one of the reasons was challenges with recruitment, an overlap and a focus of priorities and focuses for the 2 different boards. And it's going to reduce a lot of staff energy and effort in terms of preparing separate minutes, agendas.
it makes sense. I mean, they're fighting the same problem.
Certainly, and the
Right.
police department will maintain oversight over that committee, and they'll coordinate with the Public Works Department and our Public Works Director and City Engineer.
In that spirit, what would be the thought about joining the tree committee and the EPC?
The tree committee is not a formal Brown Act committee.
I know that, but I'm not asking that question. I'm saying, what would be is there merit to doing it?
In my opinion, no, but I'd like to hear why you think that it's
Well,
valuable.
I think because one, I dealt with a tree committee. Great people, but I think there's a bigger issue. And a bigger issue with environment and trees than they're addressing. And it would be a mistake for us to look to do that in a vacuum without them.
I'm not entirely following. So our tree committee and our tree committee doesn't meet very regularly, to my knowledge.
Correct,
They primarily focus on hosting tours at the park,
correct.
preparing historical information related to the
Correct.
trees that we have that are native species. And so they're more of an outreach group of members. They're not as focused on policy, programmatic initiatives,
Correct.
advisory related topics. So whereas, yes, they're focused on the environment, I would argue that their focus is more social than policy and program.
You're arguing, don't hold me to this word, it's kind of like a garden committee for trees.
That's a fair characterization.
So what if we said in the environmental committee, trees are an important part of our environment. And we are losing our trees in Atherton. The canopy is being destroyed. We need to find a way to keep the canopy we have, and if not, and if possible, increase it. There is nothing better for the environment than to have a larger tree canopy.
So we're giving away 100 oaks in the centennial celebration.
It's a nice gesture, and in
It was
in
your
100
idea,
years,
Ken. Yeah.
and in 100 years, they'll each have a
Thank
little
you,
canopy.
council member.
Nice talking.
Bye, thanks for coming.
And so I'm working with the college again in Menlo Park on something called, and in fact, you guys ought to think about it in the high school program, something called the Tree Canopy Program. And what they do in colleges around the country, cities and even high schools, is they create an inventory of their tree canopy. They then know all the trees, I mean, within reason, all the trees and their canopy today. And they say, over time, are we losing it? Is it getting bigger? And how do we keep it either as it is or get it even bigger? And without measuring it, you don't know. I argue that we do all of our tree work in Atherton on a case-by-case basis. It just happens. And we then run in and solve the problem, do something. We know a tree left, but we don't have the overall picture of what is our current canopy. How do we make it bigger? How do we make it healthier? And the reason I bring this up is my goal is to get Menlo College, Santa Clara has it, UCLA, a lot of other schools do this, a tree canopy program. It's sponsored by the Arbor Day Foundation. Have them do it, and then once they do it in Menlo College, see if we can move it into the town of Atherton. Now, I understand we have a tree inventory. I just don't know what that is and how it's put together. And I guarantee it's not anything like the tree inventory that the tree canopy world does. And as I look at the environmental problem in Atherton, my biggest concern about Atherton is we're losing huge amount of canopy that we're from heritage trees and others, that planting an 8-foot tree ain't gonna solve that problem. And so if we don't know it's happening, how do we judge it?
Instead of merging, could we just have collaboration like once a quarter or?
We could do that easily. I
just-
go to the tree committee meetings when they occur,
Yeah, so it's a little bit less formal.
but the question is, you wouldn't merge unless you thought, or even think about merging, unless you thought we as an environmental committee should look at the tree canopy. Is that of interest to us? Is the tree canopy in our area an interesting environmental issue?
Does it fall within our remit? I mean, we're
Why not?
programmed.
Well, I mean, feel free to tell me to be quiet. I would say, sure, you could make a case that the tree canopy falls under, what the EPC's focus might want to be. However, the tree committee, they don't have any involvement on the assessments of our trees, the inventory of our trees. I wouldn't say that they know, well, we have 35 trees that are on public owned land and they don't have that information. That would
Somebody
be,
does. I've been told we
the
do.
town arborist has that.
So Sally has all that.
Correct. Now, how thorough her inventory and her databases, don't
Yeah.
don't get me out there lying, but she would be the person that would manage that
So
information.
what's your if I thought that tree canopy and its absorption of carbon dioxide, et cetera, was an important thing to the environment in Atherton, my first step would go talk to Sally, is what you're saying?
Depending on what outcome you want to get, if you just I'd like information
I'm
on,
gonna clean her Atherton. I
Well,
want,
if it's a programming thing, then we have a panel or education night on carbon sequestration.
Mhm.
And we include the arbor, Sally, and we also talk about composting.
yeah,
So just lump it all under
Yeah, yeah.
sequestration and then, but again, keeping it rather informal. My concern with merging is we have a lot of events here that we'd like to roll out. That's part of our mandate, which is education for our residents. And we need to start Earth Day now because that is a huge event that needs a lot of planning. So I think we're going to get under pressure and we won't have enough resources to achieve all of our
that would be a
existing
diversion.
goals.
That would be a diversion.
Yeah. But if we can bring Sally in or do some sort of informal collaboration, I think that would be
Is
great.
sequestration on this list somewhere?
No.
Okay. Right. No, that would be the topic, basically. I mean, that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
When you're talking about, absorbing the carbon dioxide that our gasoline cars are sending off, right?
The potential for carbon sequestration is so small. With our calculations, we can maybe offset or sequester like 1% of the town's emissions. And so when we're looking at that higher level picture of what's gonna have the greatest
Where
climate
did that,
benefit,
where did that come from?
it came through from our climate action reporting, which is part of a national model
Where
of
did that
ICLEI.
data come from?
We can review that at another point,
I mean,
but
there's a group in Palo Alto called Tree Canopy, which may have different data than that. We should
No.
talk to them.
But on the carbon sequestration, I think it would be so interesting to have someone speak to us about fires because forest fires are automatically emitting tons of carbon into the atmosphere. So, just it could be a broad topic. People are talking a lot about sequestration. I mean, you could have somebody there with a carbon-based cement for all, there's a lot of really cool initiatives.
Mhm.
There's no way we can capture all the carbon emissions out there, even with all the technologies that we have or that are planned to have compared to reducing our emissions if we want to hit the target that the IPCC has recommended. But I think people are interested, and this area in particular has a lot of cool technology around the concept of sequestration. So I think we do it as an educational event and we collaborate with the arborists and the folks who are working around the canopy.
And I know I don't know if this is a discussion happening at fire around less trees. Is that a thing around clearing? Is that a conversation that's happening? Is there a tension there around planting trees? Is there a community conversation to be had there?
There's not a lot of community conversation. There are things like weed abatement programs. So we just process the ordinance. We just basically mowed weeds at, I think, about 30 different properties where the residents weren't taking care of it.
Say we, you mean the fire
We, the
department.
fire district, yeah. So the fire district, Menlo Park, Atherton, East Palo Alto, North Fair Oaks. So we actually go in and we notice them that they're violating the weed abatement policy. We give them time to clean it. They don't clean it, we send in a cleaning crew. We put a lien on their property for that cost, including administrative fees.
And when you
so-
say so you're part of the fire department that takes care of us too. Gotcha.
Yeah, Menlo Park Fire Protection District is Atherton, East Palo Alto, Menlo Park, North Fair Oaks. A little different than a lot of communities where each individual city has their own fire department. So we're in a special district and overlay. So we do that. We do some public education around trying to keep, limbs and leaves off of residents' roofs. Obviously, we enforce the fire codes. The fire codes are moving away from wood roofs and more and more to fire safe materials. Where the tree canopy is going to come into conflict with something bigger is the insurance challenge in California. And in the fire insurance challenges, largely the insurance companies are canceling policies if you have too many trees on your property because they perceive it as a fire hazard. So it's not going to be what the fire department wants. We're fine with it. We deal with it. Obviously, the windstorms, we dealt with a tremendous number of tree generated emergencies. I think at one stage not only did we have every unit in San Mateo County dispatched during the wind emergency, mostly to trees down with wires. I think there was 150 calls that were not dispatched yet. So we used all our administrative staff, fire marshals, everybody covering those. So trees do complicate emergency response in wind events and storm events, but
We should all-
there's no particular policy by the fire district that discourages the planting of trees. And I don't think this fire district will ever adopt anything like that, but we haven't had a lot of debate on it and hasn't come forward as a formal agenda item.
So maybe the reverse is true. We should try to get rid of our canopy. Is that what you're saying? I mean, that might be a way to save money.
Well,
And
I
reduce
can tell you as a resident, I wouldn't like that. I mean, I live on a street where, we've lost a tremendous number of trees to disease and everything. And then we've had some residents that have just done these horrible chainsaw attacks on trees that, they can't remove them, but they can sure kill them.
Yeah.
And it's changing the whole look of our street. Personally, I'd prefer a solid tree canopy And it can be done safely as long as you don't, plant them such that the branches are laying on the roof of your house.
I mean, it's.
That's it. That is a serious fire
Really a
danger.
systems problem. I mean.
Yeah.
You can't plant the wrong, I mean, the worst thing trees around here are the eucalyptus, the gum trees. They're the worst thing for it. We had, as you know, isn't the state trying to get rid of all of them?
Some of them, there's certain ones that are,
Yeah, I mean, there's some major clearing projects going of eucalyptus as an example. So if you go over into El Granada in the coast side area, they have a massive, basically eucalyptus elimination problem. Those are like just loaded with fuel. If a fire starts in a eucalyptus grove,
Over, yeah.
it's just all over. Whatever houses are nearby are
They're
going to
gone.
burn. They're not going to stop it. Diseased pine trees, dead trees, the secondary.
Acacias are the ones that you guys don't like either.
Which ones?
Acacia, is that right?
I don't know about that. I'm not the expert on
That's
all
what
the,
giraffes eat.
You're
the
bringing-
tree varieties, but clearly eucalyptus is one of the worst, and dead pine trees.
But you bring up a good point, because from a fire district point of view, also an insurance point of view, if we did a tree inventory, we would then know what diseased and deadly fire hazards we have.
Right.
To get rid of, and potentially eucalyptus and other ones which could be a problem, and have a plan to make our canopy better, but more fire resistant. We could do that.
Yeah, there's certainly policies the town could adopt that says if you're taking out a non-native species over a certain size, or you're removing a diseased tree, when you get the permit to do that, because most tree removal in Atherton requires a permit,
Yep.
that you have to replace it.
Yeah.
But you have to replace it with an acceptable species of tree.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't cut down the big eucalyptus tree and plant another one. They kind of grow like weeds.
You didn't like my idea about eucalyptus. Do you have one you like or something?
no, I just read that it's not uniform, all eucalyptus are
Really?
fire hazards. Yeah, I read that.
Well, I'm sure there's some varieties that are
Versus
safer than
eucalyptus
other
wouldn't burn like a
varieties.
minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll leave that to the town arborist.
Yeah, and all this is in the context of, is it appropriate to have the EPC and the tree committee join forces?
I'm not, stop, I've canceled that.
Oh,
I-
easy.
I like the idea of collaboration, and if the
Well, collaboration,
students
yeah.
if the students at Menlo College want to do the project as like part of their, I don't know, environmental programs committee or themselves,
This is not a free project, because you got, I'm doing a lot of research into it. One of them is, when you get it, you eventually won't have software that you up to date all the time. Because you can't just do it and have an inventory and a plot, right? It's a massive, but once you get the data, you can work with it. And truthfully, from a fire point of view, knowing what the tree's health was around here and where, and the size of the canopy over wires is a very important thing.
are there nonprofits that do that work for free?
Not that I know of.
Sounds like something to bring to the fire board meetings.
So,
We'll
but
have to identify when the next one is for you can. But there are a lot of synergies, and the fires do remind us of why it's important to take climate action.
to what meeting are you asking? You said
Oh, fire board.
there's a
meeting.
fire board in Menlo Park and in Atherton?
Yeah, he's one of your electeds.
So wait a minute.
Menlo Park Fire Protection Special District. So it's no different than town council, elected officials. We collect our revenue.
But you're not part of the town.
Yes.
We provide fire services.
Oh, no, but you're not part of the town. You're a service provider to the town.
We are a service provider.
Okay.
So they're in a special district that the town belongs to.
Yeah. I'm just trying to figure out. So if you had a budget, could you fund a tree inventory?
There's a potential that we just as the town of Atherton could fund it.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, it's not in the agenda. I didn't put on our agenda.
But
Nor
as,
Or
is
you
an
could
agenda
do a
here, so we
fundraiser.
can't talk
You
about
could do a
it.
fundraiser.
Yeah, so we
We
can't
fund
talk
these
about it.
But you
Unfortunately.
could, right, I was just thinking for the students, it's a great project. They could do a
all right,
fundraiser.
done. You've answered what I need. Thanks.
Yeah, so as far as recruitment goes, feel free to get as creative as you want with the students and really honestly think big, and then we can bring it back here when the time comes to see if it's an appropriate.
You should
project, or we
understand,
can
no
talk.
offense to our intern, you should understand with students and with nonprofit, free organizations, you get exactly what you pay for. And so you use them where they're good, But don't ask them to do things they really are not able to.
Well,
do.
we'd want to lead with their interest for sure if we're not paying them. So,
I'm just
yeah,
telling you.
thank you, Ken.
Relative to recruitment would be to your benefit to be careful around the high school students.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Really?
What things do we have on the agenda that we haven't covered because time is passing?
Yes, thank you, Gregory.
For more stuff?
I think we're good. That's all we have on the agenda, beyond identifying topics for next meeting. And we can do that offline. So I think Gregory, if you need to move on with your day, I invite that and we can adjourn here.
No, I don't. There's one more question that I want to bring up, which I haven't heard that anybody covered, and that was that last time we discussed whether the event next year, the Earth Day next year, would be global or local. And the recommendation that I got from Rick DeGolia that I mentioned at the second meeting was that the reports were so good for the one we had in this year that we should do the same thing. And I think that requires getting some money into the town to make sure that we're covered. But I would like to make sure that everybody now agrees that that's a good idea.
Yes, that was gonna be the recommendation we make to council. We also have a survey out to the public right now, so we can fold in any ideas. If there's a lot of public consensus around not partnering, then we can kind of come back together. Otherwise, the group's idea is to collaborate again and make that recommendation to council, and then council will approve and allocate $5,000.
When will that happen? When will that?
I'm
approval?
aiming for October, since August there's no council meetings. September, there's a big housing item. October was the soonest I was told that we could make
Okay,
that
and
decision.
that's not too late.
I don't believe so. Last year, we started planning in November, December, so.
Yeah, but Gregory, you make a good point, particularly around the location. I know we talked about Menlo College, which I think would be great, but we probably need to at least reach out to see if they could even tentatively hold the spot.
So in the meantime, I could tentatively reach out to Menlo College and MA and just see what their availability is, just as information gathering.
Okay, so Menlo Atherton would not be the place.
Well,
It could still be.
I think it's still an option, but a couple people mentioned Menlo College and that might be an idea. Did you talk about that, Ken? I can't remember.
No, I've had that conversation.
I don't remember who.
It has some advantages because of its proximity,
Location.
and it would be more open. It's worth talking about, yeah.
Yeah, but if we were to do Menlo College, we'd have to try to reserve the parking because usually that's used for sports events. So
And Earth Day is a Saturday, yeah, obviously.
this year it falls on a
Sunday.
Sunday. I mean, sorry, 2024.
So it's a Sunday.
Yeah,
It's a
You
Sunday.
have it on Sunday?
I believe so.
Yeah, we heard from the survey of vendors that they prefer Sunday because Saturday is their biggest day.
Yeah, it's a good idea. Yeah.
Remember that the question that the committee brought up last time was the only argument that was a little bit negative on the global approach was that apparently not too many people from Atherton participated. And there was some attempt to find out why that happened. Why did the global aspect that we took as an approach at Menlo Atherton may have or may not have discouraged some people from Atherton from participating? Remember that we discussed that, but we didn't know the answer.
Yeah, and to that, we put out a survey, which just went out today, though. So we'll get a better sense in the next few weeks. And we'll meet again in
In October.
September. Well, we as a committee will meet in September. Our
Okay,
next meeting's on September 21st. So we can discuss the results of the survey then. And I can also send them out much sooner, so we can all marinate individually on the
the
results.
survey is sent to every resident?
It's gone out on social media, and this week it'll go out in our e-newsletter, and they'll go out in our printed newsletter that hits mailboxes September 7th.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
So
Good.
it's
So
slowly.
you
getting
think
along.
we'll get an answer?
Yes.
Well, you get an answer from the people that respond.
Yeah, we're gonna answer from the
You
people.
will,
that
you will not
respond.
get an answer from the people that don't respond, which will be the vast majority.
I
Well-
wonder if we could bring it up at the other committee meetings, just as a little reminder,
To take the survey
and tell their friends.
about the survey.
Mm.
Yeah.
yeah, I know, I thought last year's, the one in mental health was great. But with the one caveat, we had less athletic guys there. Does anybody have a clue, just even an estimate of how many residents showed up in mental health? Do you have any idea at all? I mean,
I don't think there's any way to know. I mean, unless you literally recognize someone
that's the
because
problem.
We
don't- I
took
can't-
zip codes at the registration, but we didn't start doing that until much later in the registration, and Atherton was like the first one to promote it. So when I was promoting it, we weren't collecting zip codes. But
I just hope that the questionnaire doesn't discourage people from doing it globally.
I don't think it will. I think it was received positively, but we'll see.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Gregory, for bringing that up again. I'm glad you're tracking that still. It will sneak up on us. So. Thank you. Now, in that survey, we also asked what sort of activities people would like to see at the event and what worked well and what didn't, timing, just so we can improve.
Yeah, so you motivate them to come.
Exactly. We made it sound really exciting in the survey.
Yes, good.
Ishni created that, so thank you. Okay, well, with that, I think we can,
should I move to adjourn?
do we move or can we just adjourn?
Yeah, I move to adjourn.
I second the motion.
Okay, thank you.
It was
Thank
nice
you,
to see you,
Gregory.
Gregory.
Sure.
Nice to see you guys.
You
I'll follow up
too.
with you about your book and on plastics.
It'll be, we'll deliver it somehow.
Oh, thank you. All right, Gregory.
Gary, do you have a
Bye.
business
Bye.
card? Do you have a business card with you?
I do.